Maya Rodriguez was having what she liked to call a grade A, certified disaster kind of day. Her boss had blamed her for the quarterly reports being late, even though she'd submitted them 3 days early. Her coffee maker had exploded that morning, coating her kitchen in what looked like the aftermath of a caffeinated crime scene. And now, sitting on this park bench with her sad desk lunch, she was pretty sure a pigeon had just judged her life choices. "Well, thanks for the input, Captain Feathers," she muttered, unwrapping her turkey sandwich with the enthusiasm of someone defusing a bomb. "Really appreciate the commentary on my career trajectory." The pigeon cooed judgmentally and waddled away, probably to spread gossip about the human woman talking to herself on bench number 7. Maya took a bite of her sandwich and immediately regretted every decision that had led to this moment. The turkey was dry enough to qualify as jerky, and the bread had the structural integrity of wet cardboard. That's when she heard it. A tiny pathetic sound somewhere between a kitten's mew and a deflating balloon. Maya looked around, half expecting to find a sad tourist who'd gotten lost looking for the zoo. Instead, she spotted something small and scaly huddled under the nearby bushes. "Oh, come on," she said to no one in particular, because my day clearly needed more complications. The creature was about the size of a house cat, with iridescent green scales that caught the sunlight like little emeralds. It had enormous golden eyes that were currently giving her the most heartbreaking puppy dog expression she'd ever seen. Which was impressive, considering it definitely wasn't a puppy. "What are you supposed to be?" Maya asked, crouching down to get a better look. "Some rich person's exotic pet that escaped? Please tell me you're not venomous. I really don't have the health insurance for a mysterious creature bite." The little thing made that pitiful sound again, and crawled closer, clearly starving. Its tiny belly was making audible gurgling noises that sounded like a broken garbage disposal. Maya looked at her terrible sandwich, then back at the creature. She'd never been great with pets. She'd killed 3 cactuses in the past year alone. But something about those golden eyes made her chest feel weird and tight. "Fine," she said, tearing off a piece of turkey. "But don't blame me if processed meat isn't part of your natural diet. I'm not exactly a wildlife expert here." She held out the meat, and the creature's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. It gobbled the turkey with tiny, surprisingly sharp teeth, then looked up at her with what she could only describe as pure adoration. Yeah, you're welcome," Maya said, trying to ignore how the warm feeling in her chest was spreading. "Don't get too attached. This is a one-time deal." But as she fed the little creature more pieces of her lunch, something strange started happening. The air around them began to shimmer with heat, and she could swear she heard a sound like a tiny blowtorch. When she looked down, the bread in her hand was perfectly toasted, golden brown and crispy. Maya blinked. Then blinked again. "Did you just?" she started, then shook her head. "No, absolutely not. I'm having a stress-induced hallucination. That's the only logical explanation. Too much overtime and not enough sleep, and now I'm imagining that a lizard just used some kind of built-in toaster function." The creature burped. A small puff of smoke came out of its mouth. Maya stared at it. It stared back, looking incredibly pleased with itself. "Oh," she said faintly. "Oh, this is not good." Maya was still staring at the smoke-burping creature when the air in front of her started doing something that air definitely wasn't supposed to do. It rippled like water, then tore open like someone had unzipped reality itself. 3 figures stepped through what Maya's brain desperately wanted to classify as a temporary malfunction in the space-time continuum, but was probably just her Tuesday getting infinitely worse. The first figure was tall, blue, and wearing what looked like a military uniform designed by someone who'd only heard second-hand descriptions of clothing. He had too many arms and a face that suggested he took himself very seriously, which Maya immediately found annoying. "Greetings, human-designated Maya Rodriguez," he said in a voice that sounded like he was speaking through a translator app with delusions of grandeur. "I am Commander Blex of the Galactic Evaluation Committee." "Of course you are," Maya said, because apparently her mouth had decided to keep working even though her brain had officially clocked out for the day. "Let me guess, you're here about my overdue library books." The second figure was shorter, had purple skin, and was frantically scribbling notes on something that looked like a tablet made of crystal. "Fascinating," she exclaimed, completely ignoring Maya's sarcasm. The subject maintains humor response even during first contact protocol. "I'm Scientist Quinn, and this is remarkable data." "Data?" Maya stood up slowly, still holding the tiny creature who had apparently decided her lap was the perfect napping spot. "I'm sorry, but did you just call me a subject? Because I've had performance reviews that were less dehumanizing than that." The third figure looked like he was barely old enough to vote, assuming his species had elections. He was green, gangly, and carrying what appeared to be an alien clipboard. Commander," he said nervously, should I be recording this? The manual wasn't clear about what to do if the subject becomes sassy. It's not sass, Maya interrupted. It's a completely reasonable response to having my lunch break invaded by creatures who look like they stepped out of a sci-fi convention. Also, could someone please explain why this lizard just turned my sandwich bread into gourmet toast? Commander Blex puffed up with the kind of pride that usually preceded very long, very boring explanations. Human Maya Rodriguez, you have been observed for the past 17 rotations performing acts of kindness without expectation of reward. Today's demonstration of compassion toward a vulnerable creature has fulfilled the requirements of Galactic Protocol 77 Alpha. I'm sorry, what now? Maya looked down at the creature in her arms, who was purring like a tiny scaly engine. 17 days. You've been watching me for 17 days. That's not observation, that's stalking. In some states that's a felony. Scientist Quinn looked up from her note-taking with obvious excitement. Your species exhibits remarkable consistency in protective behavior patterns. Even when faced with the unknown, you prioritize the welfare of smaller beings. It's quite admirable, actually. Admirable? Maya's voice went up an octave. Lady, I gave a weird park lizard some processed turkey because it looked hungry. I'm pretty sure that's just basic human decency, not some cosmic achievement worthy of alien surveillance. Intern Zorp raised his hand tentatively. Should I mention that it's not actually a lizard? The other two aliens shot him looks that could have powered a small spacecraft. Not lizard. Maya repeated slowly, looking down at the purring, smoke-breathing creature who was now nuzzling against her shirt with obvious affection. Okay, I'll bite. What exactly have I been feeding turkey sandwiches to? Commander Blex cleared his throat with unnecessary drama. That, human Maya Rodriguez, is a juvenile Draconis imperialis. What your species would term a baby dragon. Maya stared at him, then at the scientist, then at the nervous intern. Finally, she looked down at the tiny creature who chose that exact moment to yawn, revealing a mouth full of needle-sharp teeth, and a tongue that glowed like a tiny ember. A dragon, she said flatly. A baby dragon, Zorp corrected helpfully. Right, a baby dragon. That I've been feeding processed meat in Central Park. Maya felt that familiar sensation of her life spiraling completely out of control. And you three have been watching this happen for over 2 weeks because, Commander Blex announced with the tone of someone about to drop a cosmic bombshell, you have just passed the Galactic Council's preliminary assessment for species integration. Maya blinked. Come again. Congratulations, Scientist Quinn added cheerfully. You're humanity's first official candidate for intergalactic citizenship. The baby dragon purred louder and breathed a happy little puff of smoke that smelled like cinnamon and regret. Maya looked around the park, half expecting cameras to pop out of the bushes with someone yelling surprise. Instead, she saw the same joggers, the same dog walkers, and the same judgmental pigeon from earlier, all completely oblivious to the fact that her species had apparently just joined some kind of cosmic community college. This is not how I imagine my Tuesday going, she said finally. Well, Commander Blex said, consulting what appeared to be a holographic clipboard that was somehow even more pretentious than a regular clipboard. According to Galactic Protocol 77 Alpha, subsection 12, paragraph. Let me see here. Oh, for crying out loud, Maya interrupted, shifting the baby dragon to a more comfortable position. Just give me the Cliff Notes version. What exactly does intergalactic citizenship mean, and more importantly, what does it mean for someone who can barely manage her own checking account? Scientist Quinn practically vibrated with excitement. It means you've been selected as humanity's official representative to the Galactic Council. Isn't that wonderful? Maya stared at her. I'm sorry, run that by me again. I've been selected as what now? Your species ambassador, Commander Blex explained, with the patience of someone talking to a particularly slow child. Your act of selfless compassion toward a vulnerable creature demonstrates the empathetic qualities necessary for peaceful intergalactic relations. Empathetic qualities. Maya's laugh had a slightly hysterical edge to it. Buddy, I once made my coworker cry because I told her that her presentation skills needed work. I'm about as diplomatic as a cheese grater. There has to be some kind of mistake here. No mistake, Intern Zorp chimed in, then immediately looked like he regretted speaking. The quantum probability scanners confirmed it. You scored 97% on the compassion index. What's the other 3%? Maya asked, because apparently her curiosity was stronger than her sense of self-preservation. Zorp consulted his notes nervously. Mild sarcasm and a tendency to anthropomorphize urban wildlife. The pigeon thing, Maya said with dawning understanding. You heard me talking to the pigeon. We hear everything, Commander Blex said. which was somehow both reassuring and deeply disturbing. But your consistent patterns of kindness, even during personal stress, mark you as an ideal candidate for diplomatic service. Maya looked down at the baby dragon, who was now making tiny contented rumbling sounds. Okay, let's say I buy into this whole cosmic ambassador thing for a minute. What about this little guy? Please tell me his parents aren't going to show up looking for him, because I'm pretty sure kidnapped alien royalty isn't covered by my renter's insurance. The three aliens exchanged glances that Maya was rapidly learning to recognize as the universal expression for "this is about to get complicated." Well, Scientist Quinn said carefully, that's where things get a bit more interesting. Interesting how? Maya demanded. Because my definition of interesting and the universe's definition seem to be having a fundamental disagreement lately. Commander Blex cleared his throat. The juvenile Draconis Imperialis you've been nurturing is actually Prince Pip of the Xerion Prime dynasty. Prince Pip, Maya repeated faintly. His full name is Prince Pip Paction Flameright the 17th, heir to the Crimson Throne, Lord of the Eastern Nebulae. Zorp added helpfully. But his friends call him Pip. Maya looked down at Prince Pip, who chose that moment to sneeze and accidentally set a nearby dandelion on fire. You're telling me I've been feeding turkey sandwiches to alien royalty? Not just any alien royalty, Scientist Quinn said with obvious delight. The Dragon Emperor of Xerion Prime has been searching for his missing heir for 3 standard cycles. Prince Pip here apparently decided to go on what humans might call a walkabout, and ended up stranded on your planet when his personal transport experienced mechanical difficulties. His spaceship broke down, Maya translated. Catastrophic engine failure, actually, Zorp corrected. It's currently embedded about 40 feet underground in Central Park's East Meadow. Maya processed this information while Pip purred against her shoulder. So let me get this straight. I accidentally adopted an alien prince whose dad is probably worried sick, and now I'm supposed to be humanity's spokesperson to a galactic government I didn't even know existed until 10 minutes ago. That's a remarkably accurate summary, Commander Blex said approvingly. And what happens if I say no? Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The aliens exchanged another one of those looks. Well, Scientist Quinn said slowly, according to the nourishment bond protocols of Xerion Prime, by feeding Prince Pip, you've essentially become his legal guardian until he can be returned to his family. His legal guardian, Maya repeated numbly. The Dragon Emperor takes family bonds very seriously, Commander Blex added, particularly when it comes to the care of his offspring. By providing sustenance to Prince Pip in his time of need, you've entered into what his species considers a sacred trust. Maya felt a familiar sensation that she'd come to recognize as her life taking another sharp left turn into the impossible. So I'm stuck with him. Pip chose that moment to look up at her with those enormous golden eyes and make a tiny happy chirping sound that was probably illegal in 17 dimensions due to excessive cuteness. I mean, Maya said, her resolve crumbling like a house of cards in a hurricane. I guess he is pretty cute. And he does seem to like my terrible sandwiches. Excellent, Commander Blex declared. Then it's settled. You'll accompany us to the mothership, for your formal introduction to the Galactic Council. Mothership. Maya's voice cracked slightly. As in leaving Earth, right now, because I should probably call in sick to work, and I need to water my plants, and I'm pretty sure my landlord has feelings about intergalactic travel that weren't covered in my lease agreement. Don't worry, Scientist Quinn said reassuringly. Time dilation fields mean you'll be back before anyone notices you're gone. Maya looked around the park one more time, taking in the normal Tuesday afternoon scene of people going about their completely mundane lives, blissfully unaware that their species had just joined some kind of cosmic neighborhood watch program. You know what? She said finally, scratching Pip behind what she assumed were his ears. My day was already weird enough. Why not add accidental alien diplomacies to the list? Prince Pip purred his approval and accidentally toasted another dandelion. The mothership, Maya discovered, looked exactly like what would happen if someone took a luxury cruise liner and redesigned it by committee with beings who had never actually seen luxury cruise liners or possibly even the concept of interior decorating. Everything was either chrome, glowing, or making soft humming noises for no apparent reason. Welcome aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Echo, Commander Blex announced as Maya stepped through what she assumed was an airlock, but looked more like a fancy revolving door with commitment issues. Harmony's Echo. Maya raised an eyebrow while Pip explored her shoulder with the enthusiasm of a tiny, scaly mountaineer. Let me guess, you guys named this thing during a particularly optimistic committee meeting. The name was chosen to reflect our peaceful intentions, Blex replied stiffly. Right, Because nothing says we come in peace like a ship the size of a city block hovering invisibly over Manhattan, Maya muttered. I'm sure that wouldn't cause any panic at all if people could actually see it. Scientist Quinn appeared at her elbow, still scribbling notes. Your species' capacity for humor during stress situations continues to be remarkable. Do you always use sarcasm as a coping mechanism? Only when I'm having a completely normal day that somehow turned into a sci-fi movie without my permission, Maya said. Call it a quirk. They were led through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, past rooms full of beings that Maya's brain helpfully catalogued as definitely not from around here. Some had too many tentacles, others had too few heads, and one group appeared to be having a heated discussion in what sounded like whale song mixed with dial-up internet sounds. So, Maya said, trying to distract herself from the growing realization that she was actually on an alien spaceship. When exactly am I supposed to meet this Dragon Emperor? Because I should probably mention that I've never met royalty before, and my diplomatic experience pretty much peaks at avoiding arguments in grocery store checkout lines. Actually, intern Zorp said nervously, he's been waiting for you in conference room 7 since we detected your approach to the ship. Maya stopped walking. He's here, right now? On this ship? The Emperor tends to be very proactive when it comes to family matters, Commander Blex explained. When our scouts reported that Prince Pip had been located and was in the care of a human, he immediately departed Xerion Prime to personally oversee the reunion. Of course he did, Maya said faintly, because my day clearly needed more pressure. What am I supposed to say to an alien emperor? Sorry I accidentally adopted your kid, but in my defense he was really hungry and making sad noises. Pip chose that moment to chirp reassuringly and nuzzle against her neck, which would have been adorable if Maya wasn't currently having a mild panic attack about interspecies diplomacy. Just be yourself, Scientist Quinn advised cheerfully. Your natural empathy and humor are exactly why you were selected for this role. My natural empathy got me into this mess in the first place, Maya pointed out. And my humor tends to get me in trouble at PTA meetings, let alone with cosmic royalty. They stopped in front of a door that was somehow both intimidating and sparkly, which Maya decided was probably a design choice she'd never understand. Commander Blex pressed his hand to some kind of scanner, and the door dissolved like sugar in water. The being waiting inside was nothing like what Maya had expected from someone called the Dragon Emperor. For starters, he was only about 7 feet tall, which seemed almost modest by alien standards. His scales were a deep rich purple that shifted to gold in the light, and his eyes were the same warm amber as Pip's, just about 50 times larger and infinitely more regal. He was also, Maya noted with growing panic, clearly upset. Human, he said in a voice that sounded like distant thunder with excellent diction. You have cared for my offspring. Maya said, because her brain had apparently decided that single syllables were the safest option when talking to alien royalty. Yes? The Dragon Emperor studied her with an intensity that made Maya feel like she was being evaluated on 17 different levels simultaneously. Pip, completely oblivious to the tension, chose that moment to wave one tiny paw at his father and make happy baby dragon noises. The Emperor's expression immediately softened into something that could only be described as parental mush. My son appears, content, he's been great company, Maya said, finding her voice again. Very polite, excellent table manners, and he only set fire to things accidentally. Mostly. You have fed him? Turkey sandwiches. Mostly. Some crackers. I tried to give him water, but he seemed to prefer the hot chocolate from the vendor cart. Maya paused, then added, I probably should have asked about dietary restrictions first, but he seemed to know what he liked. The Dragon Emperor's eyes widened slightly. You shared your sustenance with him freely, without payment or expectation of reward. Well, yeah, Maya said confused. He was hungry. And making these heartbreaking little sounds that were basically the universal language for please feed me before I expire from sadness. What else was I supposed to do? Most beings would have contacted authorities or attempted to capture him for profit, the Emperor said slowly. The juvenile dragons of Xerion Prime are valuable. Valuable. Maya looked down at Pip, who was now trying to catch his own tail and failing spectacularly. I mean sure, he's adorable, but he's also someone's kid. You don't monetize someone's kid just because they're lost and scared. The silence that followed was so profound that Maya could hear the ship's engines humming 3 decks away. The Dragon Emperor stared at her with an expression she couldn't read, while Commander Blex and his team stood at attention like they were witnessing something historically significant. Finally, the Emperor spoke. The ancient laws of Zirion Prime dictate that those who provide nourishment to our young in times of need become bound to our family through the sacred trust of sustenance. This bond cannot be broken and carries with it certain obligations. Obligations. Maya's voice went up an octave. What kind of obligations? Because I should mention that I'm really bad with responsibility. I once killed a succulent. Protection, the Emperor said simply. By caring for Prince Pip, you have demonstrated the compassion and strength that mark a true guardian. Our family is now honor-bound to protect yours. Maya blinked. My family? You mean humanity? Your entire species? Yes. The Dragon Emperor inclined his head formally. The Draconic Protectorate of Zirion Prime hereby extends its shield over the planet you call Earth and all who dwell upon it. Because I shared a sandwich, Maya said weakly. Because you saw a hungry child and chose kindness over convenience, the Emperor corrected. This is not a small thing, human Maya Rodriguez. Commander Blex cleared his throat. Your Majesty, if I may. There is also the matter of the Slug Collective's recent territorial expansion. They've been making aggressive moves toward this sector, and Earth falls within their projected conquest route. The Dragon Emperor's expression darkened considerably. The slugs dare to threaten worlds under draconic protection. They're not aware of the new arrangement, Scientist Quinn said quickly. The protection treaty was just established. Maya raised her hand tentatively. Sorry, but did someone just say Slug Collective? Please tell me that's not as ominous as it sounds. Unfortunately, Intern Zorp said nervously. It's probably more ominous than it sounds. They're kind of warlike, and they really don't like it when new species join the galactic community without their permission. Maya looked down at Pip, who had given up on his tail and was now trying to figure out how to eat his own foot. So let me get this straight. I fed a baby dragon some processed meat, accidentally became humanity's representative to Space Congress, and now we're under the protection of an alien empire because of ancient nourishment laws. That's remarkably accurate, the Dragon Emperor said approvingly. And there's an aggressive slug army heading our way. Also accurate. Maya was quiet for a long moment, processing the full weight of what her lunch break had unleashed. Finally she looked up at the Dragon Emperor with determination that surprised even her. Okay, she said. What do I need to know about diplomatic protocol? Because if I'm humanity's accidental ambassador, I should probably figure out how to do the job without starting an intergalactic war. The Dragon Emperor smiled, revealing teeth that could have doubled as industrial equipment. I believe, human Maya Rodriguez, that your instincts will serve you well. Pip chirped approvingly and accidentally singed her sleeve, which Maya decided to take as a vote of confidence. Maya was still processing the concept of accidental interspecies diplomacy when every alarm on the ship decided to have a synchronized nervous breakdown. The lights shifted from their normal soft glow to an aggressive red that made everything look like the inside of a particularly angry lava lamp. Well, she said, bouncing Pip gently as he startled at the noise. I'm guessing that's not the dinner bell. Commander Blex was frantically consulting his holographic clipboard while looking like someone had just told him his insurance premiums were doubling. Your Majesty, we have multiple contacts approaching at high velocity. Configuration matches Slug Collective battle formations. The Dragon Emperor's expression shifted from parental warmth to something that probably made entire solar systems reconsider their life choices. How many vessels? 17 dreadnoughts, 43 cruisers and approximately 200 fighter craft. Scientist Quinn reported, looking up from her suddenly very urgent note-taking. They're demanding immediate surrender of the human representative and cessation of protection protocols. They want me? Maya asked, because apparently her day hadn't reached peak absurdity yet. What could they possibly want with someone who sells insurance and can't keep a houseplant alive? You represent a potential shift in galactic power dynamics, the Dragon Emperor explained with the patience of someone who'd clearly dealt with political newcomers before. Your species' admission to the Galactic Council combined with draconic protection creates an alliance that threatens their expansion plans. Maya looked around the conference room, taking in the sight of alien royalty, space bureaucrats, and what appeared to be a very serious interstellar incident that had somehow become her responsibility. Okay, so what's the plan? Do we fight them? Negotiate? Hide behind the space equivalent of a really big rock? Traditionally, Commander Blex said carefully, the Slug Collective responds only to demonstrations of superior force or formal challenges to single combat. Single combat? Maya's voice went up several octaves, as in, one person fights one of them, Because I should mention that my combat experience peaks at arguing with customer service representatives, and I'm pretty sure that's not going to translate well to actual physical confrontation. Intern Zorp raised his hand nervously. Actually, the Slug Collective's definition of single combat is somewhat flexible. It can include verbal sparring, strategic contests, or displays of cultural superiority. Cultural superiority, Maya repeated. What does that even mean? Before anyone could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life with a voice that sounded like someone gargling gravel while simultaneously being deeply offended by the concept of joy. Attention, occupants of the vessel Harmony's Echo, the voice announced with all the warmth of a tax audit. This is War Slug Blorzak of the Collective's 18th Conquest Fleet. You will immediately surrender the human representative and withdraw all protection protocols, or face immediate annihilation. Maya stared at the communication panel. Did he just call himself War Slug Blorzak? Because that sounds like a name someone would make up to sound intimidating, and honestly, it's trying way too hard. The Dragon Emperor's eyes flashed with what might have been amusement. Would you like to respond to their demands, Ambassador Rodriguez? Ambassador Rodriguez, Maya looked around the room. Are we seriously doing this? Because I feel like I should point out that my qualification for this job is literally shared sandwich with Baby Dragon. That's not exactly a diplomatic resume. Your instincts brought you this far, the Emperor said quietly. Trust them. Maya took a deep breath, looked down at Pip, who was gazing up at her with complete confidence, and made a decision that she was probably going to regret for the rest of her potentially very short life. Patch me through, she said. Commander Blex's fingers flew over his controls, and suddenly Maya's voice was being broadcast to 17 dreadnoughts full of hostile alien slugs. No pressure at all. Hi there, War Slug Blorzak, she said, using the same tone she reserved for particularly difficult insurance claims. This is Maya Rodriguez, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm having a really weird day. So let's skip the whole surrender or die routine and get straight to the point. What exactly is your problem with Earth joining the galactic community? The silence that followed was so complete that Maya wondered if the communication system had broken. Then War Slug Blorzak's voice came back, sounding confused and slightly offended. Your species has not earned the right to galactic citizenship, he said, apparently thrown by her direct approach. You are primitive, violent, and unsuitable for civilized society. Primitive. Maya's eyebrows shot up. Buddy, we put a man on the moon using computers with less processing power than my coffee maker. We invented jazz, pizza, and the internet. We've got art that makes people cry and stories that make people dream. What exactly is your definition of civilized? You wage war upon each other, War Slug Blorzak shot back. Your species is fractured, chaotic, and lacks the unity necessary for peaceful coexistence. Yeah, we're not perfect, Maya admitted. We argue about politics, we disagree about pineapple on pizza, and we have an unfortunate tendency to fight over resources. But you know what else we do? We share food with strangers. We adopt stray animals. We risk our lives to save people we've never met. We create beauty for the sake of beauty and help each other through the worst times imaginable. She paused, looking down at Pip, who was listening intently as if he understood every word. I shared my lunch with a baby dragon, because he was hungry. Not because I knew he was a prince, not because I thought I'd get something out of it, but because seeing someone in need, and having the ability to help is basically the most human thing there is. Sentiment is weakness, War Slug Blorzak declared, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. The collective values strength, efficiency, and order. Strength. Maya laughed, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. You want to talk about strength? Let me tell you about a species that looked at an impossible universe and decided to explore it anyway. We shot ourselves into space on controlled explosions, because we were curious about what was out there. We split atoms and mapped our own DNA, and wrote symphonies while living on a tiny rock hurtling through the void. We're strong enough to love each other despite our differences, and brave enough to keep trying even when we fail. She took a breath, feeling the weight of every human who'd ever dreamed of the stars. And you want to call that weakness? You want to wipe out a species because we care about each other, because we choose kindness over convenience. Another long silence filled the communication channel. Maya could hear her own heartbeat in her ears while Pip made soft, encouraging sounds. Finally, War Slug Blorzak spoke again, and his voice was different somehow. Uncertain. You would fight for your species. I would, Maya said without hesitation. Not because I'm some great warrior or brilliant diplomat, but because they're mine. Because every person on Earth has the potential to share their sandwich with a hungry stranger, and that's worth protecting. Then you accept the challenge of single combat. Maya looked around the room at the faces of aliens who had somehow become her allies, at the Dragon Emperor who'd offered his protection because of a simple act of kindness, and at Prince Pip, who was purring softly against her shoulder like he believed in her completely. You know what, she said. Yeah, I accept. But I get to choose the terms. Terms. War Slug Blorzak sounded suspicious. Maya smiled, and it was the kind of smile that had once made her high school debate team fear for their lives. If humanity is supposedly so primitive and weak, then defeating us should be easy, right? So let's make this interesting. You, me, and a battle of wits. If I win, your fleet leaves this sector and never threatens Earth again. If you win, she paused, then shrugged. Well, I guess you get to be right about humans being inferior. A battle of wits. War Slug Blorzak's voice was incredulous. What manner of combat is this? The kind where the best mind wins, Maya said. Unless you're afraid that a primitive human might be smarter than a superior slug. The challenge hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Maya could practically hear War Slug Blorzak's pride wrestling with his caution. Very well, he said finally. But when you lose, human, your species will serve as an example to all who would challenge the collective's authority. Sure, Maya said cheerfully. See you in a few minutes, Blorzak. And hey, thanks for giving me a chance to prove that sometimes the best weapon is a good argument, and a complete willingness to be absolutely ridiculous. She nodded to Commander Blex to cut the communication, then looked around the room at the faces staring at her with varying degrees of admiration and terror. So, she said brightly, anyone know what war slugs are actually afraid of? Because I'm pretty sure I just challenged an interstellar warlord to the universe's most high-stakes debate, and I'd really like to not get humanity enslaved because of my mouth. Prince Pip chirped happily, and breathed a small puff of smoke that smelled like confidence and determination. Maya decided to take that as a good sign. The meeting took place in what Commander Blex diplomatically called a neutral conference space, but what Maya immediately recognized as the universe's most intimidating boardroom. The table was large enough to land a small aircraft on, made from what appeared to be crystallized starlight, and surrounded by chairs that seemed designed by beings who had very different ideas about comfortable seating. War Slug Blorzak turned out to be exactly as charming as his voice had suggested. He was roughly the size and shape of a small bus, covered in what looked like armored slime, and had approximately 47 too many eyes. He also radiated the kind of confidence that came from never having been told he was wrong about anything, ever. Human, he said, settling into his chair with a wet squelching sound that Maya tried very hard not to think about. You stand before the might of the collective and still maintain this facade of superiority. It is almost admirable in its futility. It's not a facade, Maya said, settling Pip more comfortably in her lap. The baby dragon had insisted on coming to what she'd started thinking of as the most important job interview in human history, and frankly, she needed all the moral support she could get. And it's not superiority. It's just humanity. War Slug Blorzak's many eyes swiveled to focus on her with laser intensity. Very well, let us begin this combat of minds. I will pose 3 challenges to you, human. Answer all 3 to my satisfaction, and your species will be granted the protection you seek. Fail and Earth becomes a collective resource world. Resource world. Maya's voice went flat. As in, you strip mine our planet and enslave our people. Efficient resource allocation is the cornerstone of collective philosophy, Blorzak said, with the tone of someone reciting a mission statement. Sentiment and individual desire create inefficiency. Maya looked at him for a long moment, then glanced around the room at her unlikely allies. The Dragon Emperor sat with regal composure, but she could see the tension in his posture. Commander Blex and his team were trying to look confident while clearly expecting disaster. And Pip was gazing up at her with those enormous golden eyes that seemed to say, I believe in you, Sandwich Lady. All right, she said finally. Hit me with your best shot, Blorzak. But fair warning, I've survived parent-teacher conferences and hostile takeover meetings. I'm probably more prepared for psychological warfare than you think. War Slug Blorzak's approximation of a smile was the stuff of nightmares. First challenge, prove that your species possesses strategic thinking superior to the collective. Maya tilted her head. That's easy. We invented chess. Chess. Blorzak sounded confused. A game where you simulate warfare using pieces on a board, Maya explained. But here's the thing about chess that your collective probably missed. The most powerful piece isn't the king or the queen, it's the pawn. The weakest piece. Blorzak's confusion was evident in his voice. The piece that everyone underestimates, Maya corrected. See, a pawn can become anything if it just keeps moving forward. It can transform into the most powerful piece on the board, but more than that, pawns protect each other. They advance together. They sacrifice themselves for the greater good, not because they're programmed to, but because they choose to. She leaned forward, warming to her theme. That's human strategic thinking, Blorzak. We don't just plan for victory, we plan for transformation. We turn weakness into strength, fear into courage, and ordinary people into heroes. Your collective sees individual thought as inefficiency, but we see it as our greatest tactical advantage. Warslug Blorzak was quiet for a moment, his many eyes blinking in what might have been thoughtfulness. Interesting. Second challenge. Demonstrate that your species can achieve unity without sacrificing individual identity. Maya laughed, and it was genuinely delighted. Oh, that's the easiest one yet. We call it pizza. Pizza. Now Blorzak sounded like he thought she'd lost her mind. Think about it, Maya said, getting excited. You start with a basic foundation that everyone agrees on. Bread, sauce, cheese. But then every person, every culture, every region adds their own touch. Pepperoni, mushrooms, pineapple, anchovies, barbecue chicken, corn, mayonnaise. The Dragon Emperor looked mildly horrified. Don't knock it till you've tried it, Maya said cheerfully. But that's exactly my point. We take one simple concept and let 8 billion people make it their own. And somehow, it's still pizza. We maintain the unity of the basic idea while celebrating the diversity of individual expression. She spread her hands. That's humanity in a nutshell, Blorzak. We're all human, but we're all different. We argue about toppings, we disagree about methods, but at the end of the day, we're all sitting around the same table sharing the same meal. Unity without uniformity. Strength through diversity. Warslug Blorzak was quiet for much longer this time. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its certainty. Final challenge, human. This one will determine the fate of your species. Convince me that individual compassion can triumph over collective efficiency. Maya looked down at Pip, who chose that moment to yawn, revealing his tiny sharp teeth and glowing tongue. She thought about her terrible Tuesday morning, her exploded coffee maker, her judgmental boss, and her sad desk lunch. She thought about a hungry little creature making pathetic sounds under a bush, and the moment she'd decided to share her sandwich without knowing it would change everything. You want to know about compassion versus efficiency, she said quietly. Let me tell you about a baby dragon. She lifted Pip gently, holding him so everyone could see his sleepy golden eyes and iridescent scales. This little guy was lost, hungry, and scared. By your collective standards, the efficient thing would have been to leave him alone. He wasn't my responsibility. He wasn't my species. Helping him gained me nothing, and cost me my lunch. Maya's voice grew stronger. But I looked at him, and I saw someone who needed help. Not a strategic advantage, not a resource to exploit, not a problem to solve efficiently. Just a scared kid who was hungry. She looked directly at Warslug Blorzak, meeting his multitude of eyes without flinching. That one moment of individual compassion created an alliance between species, brought protection to my entire planet, and turned a random Tuesday into the day humanity joined the galactic community. Your efficiency would have left him hungry and us alone. Maya stood up, still holding Pip, and her voice carried the weight of every act of kindness that had ever mattered. You want to know what's stronger than your collective efficiency? It's a teacher who stays late to help a struggling student. It's a stranger who stops to help someone change a flat tire. It's a person who shares their lunch with a creature they've never seen before because kindness doesn't require logic. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Individual compassion isn't weakness, Blorzak. It's the force that transforms the universe one small act at a time. It's the reason your massive fleet is negotiating with one human holding a baby dragon instead of simply destroying us all. Warslug Blorzak stared at her, for what felt like an eternity. His many eyes blinked in patterns that might have been some form of communication, or possibly just processing what he'd heard. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was different. Quieter, almost uncertain. You truly believe that individual choice and compassion can create stronger bonds than programmed loyalty and efficient resource allocation. I don't just believe it, Maya said with complete conviction. I'm living proof of it. And so is every friendship, every family, every community, and every alliance that was ever built on the foundation of someone choosing to care about someone else. Another long silence filled the room. Then, to everyone's amazement, War Slug Blorzak began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like gravel in a cement mixer, but it was definitely laughter. "Human Maya Rodriguez," he said finally, "you have accomplished something no military force has ever managed." Maya's heart stopped. "What's that?" "You have made me question the fundamental assumptions of my existence," Blorzak said, and there was something like wonder in his voice. "The Slug Collective withdraws its claim on this sector. Your species will be allowed to develop without interference." Maya blinked. "Just like that." "Just like that," Blorzak confirmed. "But know this, human, you have not merely saved your species. You have given me much to consider about the nature of strength, unity, and the value of individual choice." He began to rise from his chair, then paused. Perhaps the collective has been efficient at the cost of being effective. Your sandwich diplomacy, as you might call it, has achieved more than our conquest fleets ever have." As Warslug Blorzak and his entourage departed, Maya sank back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. Pip purred contentedly and settled into her lap for a nap, apparently confident that the universe was now properly arranged. "Well," she said to the room at large, "that went better than expected." The Dragon Emperor smiled, revealing those impressive teeth. "Ambassador Rodriguez, I believe your species will make excellent additions to the galactic community." "Ambassador Rodriguez," Maya repeated, testing the title. "You know what, I think I could get used to that." 3 months later, Maya was back at her desk job, filing insurance claims and pretending that her lunch breaks didn't sometimes involve interdimensional conference calls. Pip, now slightly larger, and marginally better at controlling his fire breathing, spent his days disguised as what her co-workers believed was an emotional support iguana with unusually expressive eyes. "Rodriguez," her boss called from across the office, "good work on the Henderson claim, very diplomatic." Maya smiled and scratched Pip behind his horns. "Thanks, Mr. Patterson. Just doing my job." What her boss didn't know, and what Maya had decided he never needed to know, was that just doing her job now occasionally included preventing interstellar incidents, and maintaining humanity's relationships with 17 different alien species. It turned out that sandwich diplomacy was a surprisingly effective foreign policy, especially when your diplomatic partner was a baby dragon who considered processed turkey to be the pinnacle of culinary achievement. And if sometimes the other insurance agents wondered why Maya Rodriguez seemed so confident during difficult negotiations, well, they probably wouldn't believe the truth anyway. After all, most people would find it hard to believe that sharing your lunch could save the world. But Maya knew better. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness created the biggest changes, and sometimes the most unlikely people became the heroes the universe needed, even if they were just having a really weird Tuesday.